Hello and welcome to Fitness Aces, a weekly live stream program where we look to educate and develop the fitness levels and physical attributes of tennis players of all levels and all ages. My name's Mike Kelly. I'm the lead strength and conditioning coach at Soto Tennis Academy in Sotogrande, Spain, and I'm joined currently with Josh from the Austin Tennis Academy in Austin, Texas. And we'll be joined shortly by Dio, who also works at the Austin Tennis Academy with Josh.
Thanks, Mike.
Hey, Josh.
So I'm Josh Rifkin, a master tennis performance specialist, as well as a tennis coach. And as Mike said, our goal for each week of this live stream is to provide you guys with different exercises, routines, drills, or programs that hit various aspects of fitness development that we're going to talk about, show some progressions and regressions to help you improve and move forward regardless of what your level. So let's start this week's first focus, which is injury prevention and activation. So in this video here, I'm showing a half kneeling ankle mobility exercise. I'm just using the club of a golf club to kind of set that position up for the outside of my foot. You can use a tennis racket, you can use a broom, a PVC pipe, anything really. But notice I'm half kneeling, 90-degree shin angle, and the stick or the tennis racket is going to be to the outside of your foot, and you're going to drive your knee to the outside of that. Okay, usually people with tight ankles here or calves or that kind of area, when they shift forward, your knee is going to fall inwards. So this is kind of forcing the direction to get the best movement in the ankle joint, which is going to help the chain of your body working more efficiently from loading on the tennis court, and it's going to help limit injuries up the chain in knees, hips, back, shoulder, and etc. So with this drill, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, like, how would you use that drill in a session? Is it something that you would use at the start of the session?
Yeah, for sure. So that's going to be what I start sessions with, or even before I go on the tennis court with. So in a perfect world, I might even spend some time rolling or having like a tennis ball and put it under your calf or ankle area and have that release some of the tissue. And then I would take someone through this pattern or this position. This thing's great because if you realize you have tight calves and ankles, that you can do this on your own. You don't have to be in session. So it's great to get the lower body moving more efficiently. And then I would go into maybe some activation type work, because what you're doing here is you're creating more movement and mobility, but now you're going to go play or work out. So you have to be able to control that new range of motion to help the body work better.
Excellent. Is that something in terms of an assessment for people at home? Is it something that you would use as an assessment tool? So is there a range that they should be in doing that exercise?
Yeah, so I wanted to show that too. So you can do this at home to know. So first of all, if you have tight ankles or limited mobility, you should be doing this. But if you have enough range, you don't want to be mobilizing or moving something that's already loose. So to test this at home to see if you need it, you can see here, you can do that same position against the wall, and you take your hand one hand width from the wall. Your goal without that knee coming forward is, can you shift forward and touch that knee to the wall without your knee coming forward inside, or without your heel coming off the ground. So if your heel's starting to come up, or you feel like a tension in the back there, that's when I would say for sure be doing something like this before. And then
we almost need to look at our feet the way we look at our hands. With our hands, we can touch. I think it's a massively overlooked part of a lot of people's preparation in terms of what they do as part of their training. I think it's a huge area for people to take seriously and include into their training. It's massive.
Yeah, for sure. So definitely overlooked. I want to show or talk about one piece of this to know that sometimes when people do this, or if you do this, you might feel some pinching in the front of the ankle there. And if you feel pinching in the front, then you should go through that range of motion just before you feel that and kind of do smaller movements within that position without feeling the pain, that typically means there's something going on with the joint. If you have a band, you can put that band around your ankle pulled backwards, and it can help open up the joint as you move through it. So that's how I would kind of monitor that, if it's basically the joint in front or if it's just like the calf and ankle in the back that needs some work. If you have knee pain, you can also go standing up and do it against the wall rather than half kneeling.
And for somebody with ankle mobility issues, what would be your go-to routine? I know you mentioned the tennis balls and things like that as well, or the lacrosse balls into the calves. Do you have anything there that you could show us?
Yeah, so I guess I have my water. Everyone's at home in quarantine. We don't know what they have, but everyone would have a tennis ball for sure. So I would take the tennis ball and put it on the calf or the ankle area just above the Achilles or the heel, and you would hunt for these spots that feel painful. When you find those spots, you can kind of sit on them for 30 seconds up to 2 minutes until it relaxes. You can do that typically for the tennis athlete. It's going to be the outside or the lateral part of the ankle and calf from all of the loading and rotation. So focusing more on the outside of that ankle, maybe a good 2 or 3 spots. So then I would take you through that ankle mobilization that I showed you. As I said before, it's super important to then reload the ankle before you're about to move. What's up, Dio? Good to see you.
Hey, Dio. Welcome.
Good. So after the ankle's mobile, you have to make sure to load it. So that's when I would take someone to maybe like a squat pattern. So they're going to be able to get a little bit lower than that. So I would have a light weight here or a tennis racket, and you just worked on the ankle mobility. So now you can press your arms out in front and sit down into a deep squat and then put that weight to the floor. And this is probably lower than you normally get because you just opened up a range of motion at the ankle. So you might look to fall backwards some and then stand up. So you're pretty much telling your nervous system, like, hey, I'm safe to get down this low, and my ankle does go this low. And I would probably do that deep squat pattern, or you can regress that to being on 4-point as well if you're not able to do a squat. And sitting into that position. From there, you just do your tennis or whatever's next in your routine or your workout for the day.
I think it's really important to know that the effect that can then have further up the body, like you've just shown us in that squat pattern. If your ankles don't have sufficient dorsiflexion, so dorsiflexion, we're talking about that angle between the foot and the shin. If we can't get enough dorsiflexion in that angle, it's going to have a higher effect up the chain, yeah? And I think a really important thing to notice is Josh is only talking about one joint, and it's amazing what that one joint can do for the rest of the body. It travels up. We then maybe feel something in our knee and our hips, or we might see a position where we're leaning forward a little bit too much if we're in that squat pattern. So I think that's what we term a single joint movement that Josh was showing you with the knee to wall, where you're just moving through that essentially one joint, where you're moving that knee to the wall, but then being able to integrate that into a movement with multiple joints. And that's essentially what tennis is. We move in multi directions, we use multi joints. So I think the integration of not just doing that one joint movement, but then building it up into an integrated movement to see what it's like is massively important in terms of that preparation for a session as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure. Can you hear me, guys?
We have
Can you hear me?
Dio, you on?
Yeah, I am here. Can you hear me?
Tough to
I can't hear you, Dio.
Can you see me?
Can't hear. Should we move on to?
Oh.
Can you hear me now?
There
Yes,
we go.
can hear you now. Good to hear your voice.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I'm dying to speak with you, because what Josh is going through is so, like you say, Mike. They're like so many little things, right? And it's one joint that we're talking about, one like very movable joint, and it's a chain, right? Many times in situations like this where the ankle doesn't move properly, you can actually get shoulder issues because the chain is not moving correctly. And this is one of the things that sometimes it's challenging to explain the coaches what's going on as well, right? To be when talking about the team, is because these little things that are so important not only for the ankle but for the whole body. Ankle, knee, and going up to the hip. That's your core already, and then like going back to your shoulder and your neck. Uh, these things are so important. This is a great mobilization exercise that you show here, Josh. Very needed, and as everybody know by now, you should copy all these things and use them and try them and criticize them and dissect them. And we're just giving you tools here so that you can use, that we use in our practice every day. So it's awesome.
Absolutely.
For sure. So Dio, do you want to do a quick intro?
I'm a high performance exercise kinesiologist. I'm a strength coach at the Austin Things Academy. And here we are together putting our brains uh, together to deliver what have worked for us, in our own lab, right? And to help each other and to help people now that are like in quarantine and have some time to think. And we're here to help each other. So that's me.
Cool. I think we're on strength now too, Dio. So all you.
Okay. What I brought here is the famous plank, right? I'm already moving here. Before the movements, I actually was staying in a plank position, as you can see. Uh, for many people, this might be just the plank. For a lot of people, the longer they do the plank in the world, there's some kind of superhero for holding this position for long periods of time. When you bring it to sports and to the spine, when you study the spine, it's very movable. It's very, it moves different places. It moves in different planes, frontal, transverse, sagittal planes. Um, and sometimes I see that we spend so much time in a position where it doesn't serve the sport because it's really hard to train for something that keep you like this for long periods of time. Because, for example, if you take the serve, you never serve like that. I understand sometimes we bring stuff like this, like when we got to go through rehab, um, and I understand that, but I see it a lot for like real training, and it doesn't make any sense. So what I do at ATA, we actually came up with the ATA planks, and is going into plank position. You never see us at ATA doing a plank like still there forever. We're always going to bring some movement because it mimics and it does what the spine actually move. So we always try to stay on how the body actually move, and that's the reason why we do it that way. And there are many ways. There's many variations. You can do things from your elbows, from your knees, uh, you name it. I mean, once again, we just give you information for you just to try different things. But in the plank, keep moving because we never play tennis like this. So, what do you think, guys?
Yeah, awesome. I mean, I'm there with Dio on that. We're experimenting with lots of different dynamic type planks. In the sense that that core does have to stabilize, the spine does move, but you want limited movement. You only want movement in areas that allow the position to happen, like in the tennis serve. You don't want to be having someone crazy arch their lower back. So, but that arm is still going to be going into through those motions of making contact through the serve. So, are you able to stabilize yourself, still load and rotate, and move your arm, but then be stable and transfer force or energy through your core? So the movement of the planks to be stable where you want, but still dynamic and control your movement, it's going to help prevent injuries, but also be a little bit more functionally correlating to the sport of tennis. So for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like Dio touched on, I think things like static planks in terms of rehabilitation or teaching positions can be fine, but like he said, we've got to get out of that as quickly as possible. We're in one of the most dynamic sports in the world, multi-direction, multi-planar sport, where we're looking at trying to get into some positions that demand like a very, very high level of core stability and core strength. Then we can't develop them by lying in a static position on the floor. We need to, at the right level, we need to test the athletes in terms of how well they move under these different conditions and how the core reacts to these more chaotic drills, as opposed to, like you say, just sitting still for 20, 30 minutes in this position. It's going to do nothing for us. It's not our sport. Yeah.
And for tennis and many sports, right? Planks is something that,
absolutely.
Sometimes I gotta backtrack and think like, where we get these exercises from? And many times, as we always talk about, many people think that we should train like we are in the armed forces, right? And we actually training for something specifically in this time, which is tennis. So very dynamic, a lot of movements, everything, shoulder, knees, ankles, everything. So to train in a mode where you're moving, actually doing something for it, is good for the game, for your brain to get used to being under the load, but also moving. It's just great, So I think like if I have to vote to take planks out of the pictures, I would do that. But I know, you have to fight the culture and tradition of exercises and keep educating people to and bring information like this that makes sense. Some people don't see it that way, and that's fine. So we're here to wake up some thoughts and do the best we can to create some discussion and ideas for people.
Yeah. At Austin, how do you guys implement that into your sessions? Is it into every session you would incorporate some core work like that? Is it a certain amount of times a week? And at what part of the session would you incorporate it?
Yeah, we do stuff like that. But we got two things as a group. We usually do things like this in private. We do stuff like this plus some decompression stuff that you will see in the future here that we do to. We always compress the body, right? So we have a different techniques to actually decompress the body as well, and then send the athlete on their way. But yeah, these are things that are already pretty much encrusted into our system. They're so needed, right? The little things that move you so far, if you do them all the time, this is one of them. So
yeah,
I think
I'm going to be.
You go, Josh.
Mike. Knew this would happen. I knew it. I say that I'm using some sort of core stability. We'll call it a plank or a dynamic plank or an ATA plank. I'm doing that or some sort of that type of movement in every one of my sessions. And typically it's going to be at the end of my circuit or supersetted exercises, or at the way end of the session when they're a little bit more fatigued and they're going to have to tap into how do I stabilize myself later on in a match when I'm more fatigued, my nervous system's tired, my body's not functioning as high level. Can I still maintain that stability and that control within my arms or legs or my rotation pattern? So I'm going to tax. It depends really like how I want to be training that athlete. Is it going to be the endurance of being stable and strong throughout that match, or is it just to be teaching that pattern or movement? And that's going to be kind of differentiating where I put that mic in the program. But there's something along a dynamic plank in every one of my sessions. So you guys watching, like I would encourage playing around with any type of plank that you might normally do, but just add a little bit of arm or leg movement or lifting or rotation. And you're going to notice that there's going to be some more demands on your body to control the position that you want. So I think it's massively important. We can show some, do you have regressions on that? Do you want to show some regressions
sure.
or
at the beginning we were going through the technical issues. And let me see if you can see me here. Maybe you won't be able to see me when I lay it on the floor. But one of the things I was talking about, it was just to put your, how I was on my arms, I was on my hands. So one of the things you can change if you're not ready yet, you can begin your plank with your elbows, and then work from there. You can also begin the movement with your leg first, and your arms are on the ground, and then you can switch. You can also alternate with that. And then when you dominate those things and you feel really strong enough to being able to engage your glutes and your chain on the back and your abs to stay engaged, then you go ahead and start bringing different things, and start like going across the body. Another thing you can do is to, when you're finished with your legs, then why don't you just move your arm and then go from there and just do like one at a time, we kind of rush through these things. You want to build a strong foundation for the body, right? All this is going to transfer to court, all of it, and the brain is also recording every single movement you're doing. So it's really important that when you're training yourself, or for coaches out there, that you do things, and even though it looks simple for a little bit, that you can just manage and control and just own that position. If it's my leg, then my legs is what it is at that time in my training. And then you're all squared up, you're like dominating the movement, and then go ahead and move and add different things. Then from there, that was the descended version, right? And then like I show you on the video, then you can like go up and go around. We also got different things at ATA. We bring different tools. We have these rubber sticks, and you just like move around. On the actual ATA plan, we actually go to arm out like A, T, A, and we change the repetitions as we go. It could be 5, 5, 5, 10, 10, 10, 3, 3, 3. You can play with that depending on the how your athletes take it and what do you see, the position and all those things. So, and then from there you can add, even jumping on 4 legs, jumping, landing. I wish I had this, with the jumping like that, and then adding different things. You go jump, and I'm lifting up. I'm lifting up my legs off the floor, my upper body off the floor. I'm landing, shock absorption of all the joints, and then challenge yourself, and like that, playing with it. So many things. We're just waking up some thoughts, like I keep saying. So
Awesome.
Awesome. I think just to add to that, in terms of tennis, when we see Djokovic or Serena, when we see them in the splits, but they're still able to maintain this upright torso, that's basically what we're talking about. It's the ability to stay tall and strong under these like what's the word, like extreme positions, I suppose. And building up, just as I said, as we said earlier, sorry, as Theo pointed out, holding a plank will never get you there. But then moving into these extreme positions, like we see on court over and over again, that's what we need to try and mimic in our gym sessions, in our what we call our lockdown sessions these days. Being able to work on these areas, and I think taking time away from being on court at the moment and actually focusing on these foundations is a massive opportunity. I think instead of looking at the lack of court time as a bit of a negative, it's a positive if you look at it the right way. Using the examples and the exercises that we've shown you today, it's a massive opportunity to develop these foundations, and when you do eventually get back on the court, you'll definitely feel better for doing them. Absolutely.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I forgot to add, I brought up like the rubber sticks that we use. It could be a racket. It could be a racket. You can change the grip to the racket to make it like really thick. Changing just the grip in an exercise program is changing the program itself. I'm playing with it. You can switch the racket, hold it by the strings, hold it by the handle, add weight to your racket. Just keep in mind that the more weight it is at the end of the object, the harder it's going to be. And I have to mention things like that because, right, some people don't know those things, and this is what we do every day. And keep playing with it. Be creative and enjoy it.
Yeah.
So in terms of the people watching at home, what would you say in terms of for the next few weeks? What would you guys advise on that in terms of how many times a day, how many sets, how many repetitions, whether it's time? What would you guys advise so people have got something to take away from today's session?
Yeah. So I guess what I would suggest on this is whatever you're doing now for your tennis training or your fitness program, take the end of that and try to play around with different plank positions and start with like a 10-second hold with some sort of dynamic movement. So hold the plank position, whether it be that front plank or we didn't even talk about, but don't neglect the side as well. So, that side plank from the knees, hold that position, and then you're going into some arm movement up top.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Can you control your hips, torso, neck, shoulders as you move that upper arm? Or maybe you're doing that side plank and you're holding and doing like a leg circle. So everything is stable that you want, and you're working on maybe a dynamic pattern for 10 seconds. See if that form's good. Rest for no longer than like 10, 15 seconds and try to go back and build multiple reps. See if you can get up to like a 30 to 60 second pattern of a plank position where you're doing a dynamic hold. That's what I would suggest.
Yeah.
It's
great,
Josh. Go ahead, Dio. Sorry.
I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't think about the different plane, going sideways and keep moving as well. That's more ideas for people to try planks in different ways and variations. So what I like to do, I'm huge on education of it because the planks falls into like the ab work, and people say the more you do it the better. And sometimes what I tell people is that would you do biceps every day? Would you do pecs every day? And planks is something that if you're gonna do it I would not recommend to do it every day. I will go every other day if you really want to keep working on that. I like to divide my ab work with lower and then obliques the next day and then upper body and the next one, then keep going if you want to do abs every day. But just keep in mind that you will not work things every day other than hands, feet, forearms, and things that that the fiber is made for that. But on the planks, the falls like core work, I would not do it every day. Once again, every other day. A variation, like stay within the plank like for a long time, but make sure you move, 45, 60 seconds on it, and make sure you bring some movement to it. And that way we keep, honoring what the body is actually made for, which is to move.
Yeah.
Awesome, Bill.
So.
Excellent. So this is moving on to my section. So I wanted to talk a little bit about power. And I suppose the sexier thing that most people want to look at is power production. But one of the most important things that we need to start off with is power reduction. So the ability to absorb load, the ability to absorb any type of power. So here I am demonstrating tall to short landings. So we've got a series of tall to short landings. I'll just let it run through a little bit first. So as you can see, all I'm trying to do is trying to reduce the force and try to absorb the force each time that I land. Within any point of tennis, or within the average point of tennis, sorry, we change direction around about 4 times. We have players coming to us all the time wanting to get faster on court, wanting to move better on court. And I always think one of the easiest ways to make some people move better on court and feel faster on court is to actually absorb force a little bit better. What use is a Formula One car without the brakes? So that's the way we look at it. Is you can have all the speed and all the power you want, but you've got to be able to control that power at the same time. And in this exercise, I would say this is probably level 2 of this exercise. Level 1 would be just going up onto 2 feet and then landing on 2 feet. So I'll give you a little demo now. So in exactly the same position, all you're going to do, feet hip width apart, reaching up as tall as you can, hands overhead, pushing right up onto the toes, and then you just drop and land. Holding that position, I'll just give you one from the side. Again, coming up as tall as you can, and then drop, absorb that force and land. If we take it back a step as well, then look at what Josh was talking about with the ankle joint. This movement also acts as a bit of a screen for us as well. So as we drop into that position, Josh was talking about the squat pattern and our landing mechanics. In this scenario, it'll look exactly like our squat pattern. So we should have a little bit of bend at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. Chest should be up nice and tall, and we should be looking forward all of the time. We don't want our knees to come in or our ankles to drop in either. I'll give you a little demo of what we don't want to see. So in that tall position, as we drop, we don't want to see any of this. So we've got knees coming in together, ankle dropping in, which can be a sign of weakness. It can also be a sign of mobility. So like Josh was talking about with the knee to wall test, it's a really, really good test to have a look at this type of exercise and say, are we in a position to be able to put this athlete through any type of power absorption work? And if they're not, we need to regress it so they get mobile in these positions before we can then progress it into power absorption before we even look at power production. If we aren't able to absorb power first, then we shouldn't be able to produce too much power, because it's like I said before, driving a Formula One car at 200 mile an hour and you've got the brakes of a little old bike, you'll just crash into a wall. Something will happen, something will give. So we look to work on that power absorption through these tall to short landings to start off with. Starting off on 2 legs and then moving on to either a single leg or moving, sometimes even putting a little bit of rotation in. Our sport's huge for rotation, so just testing yourself on those before you start to race through. Like I said, this is not the sexier side of power, but it's a massive part that's sometimes overlooked in programs. I think the ability to slow down, to absorb force, has to be there before we start layering up extra speed onto players and things like that. Don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, that's
awesome,
huge. Go, Josh. I go next.
I knew it. Happens again. So massively important. I'm so glad that you brought up like the landing mechanics and absorbing power and impact control. If you think about it, like a rubber band can't shoot without you pulling it and loading it back. So you're only able to produce efficient power and protect your body from it if you can absorb and impact that. And just going back to what Mike had said, like the average direction change about 4 times per point, it could be, depending on game style, much more. But that tennis ability to start, stop, and then restart is where you're going to cover a lot of ground in what hurts people's movement on the court. So if you can start and explode, but you can't stop, load, and restart effectively, you're going to be hurt positionally or getting to the next shot. And an example of that would be like, maybe you can relate to this, and I see it a lot, is going out for a shot. You hit the ball, and then the person takes multiple steps to slow down or multiple stutter steps afterwards, and they can't seem to stick and then transfer a direction change, right? So that's a huge example of if you have to do that 4 to 6 times in a point, and you're not stopping as you hit that shot to rechange direction effectively, you're going to be using way more energy, more chance of your body's working harder, and then you're going to be not as efficient getting to that next ball. So yeah, it's not as sexy as it looks, but it's like the prerequisite for being able to do all those box jumps than those fancy explosive power production type movements. So Mike, that's awesome. Really glad that you brought that
Yeah.
up.
I love the progression of the power here because you rarely see it, right? You know, people get strong and then they go straight up to, like, you know, to the superpower movements, and this progression of it, you know, the descending the power movement is great. And braking mechanism again is one of these things that we sometimes a fitness professional forget about, and many do, where it's so important. You know, every time you have tennis, it's stop and go, stop and go, stop and go. If you lose that ability to stop properly and recover and go again, you're losing. I mean, you're losing. And the idea, guys, for the people who are watching, is to do these things, is to that you dominate all of these things already before you go into court. So when you go to court, you actually concentrate on how to win or access your mental game, and your body actually respond to the kind of good training you've been doing. So this is the idea of doing all these things. You know, it's not for you to go to court and thinking of, you know, my hip's not working. It's not time for that. It's time to think about your strategy, go and win, and your body simply respond to the demands of it, right? So great, I love it. And Mike, do you think, like, maybe for more advanced players, we can also add some, like, maybe like 3 pounds or maybe more weight? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the tall to short landing is an excellent one to teach positions. But then I think for more advanced athletes, like a depth landing or something like that, where you're trying to. So obviously, when I go up onto my toes, I don't leave the floor for very long, and I'm not dropping from a very high height. If I want to progress that, I could step onto even just a 6-12 inch step, drop off that, and then try and absorb a little bit more force. So the higher we jump from, or the higher we drop from, the more force we've got to absorb. So in terms of not producing any more power, but absorbing more power, is that it's maybe going onto a single leg, maybe turning, like I said, in the air, that rotational element, going onto a single leg, rotating, dropping from a higher height, and then different planes as well. So obviously pushing just in that frontal plane, so just pushing off to the side, pushing forwards, but also pushing backwards. We move quite a bit of the time going backwards as well. So the ability to land and to move whilst maybe looking forwards, but stabilizing going backwards is again a massive one for a multi-directional sport like ours. And I think just going on from that, people at home have got plenty of opportunity. Like I've said before, during this period, people have got plenty of opportunity to work on, like, the things like Josh has said with the ankle work, Dio's work with the core. But the force absorption that I'm going through is almost the closest link to what you've got to court at the moment. So in terms of changing direction, in terms of absorbing force, it's going to allow you to get back onto court in a better frame of mind, being able to stop a little bit quicker, being able to absorb those forces. It's a little bit more like the sport in that sense. So it's a great one to put in this period of lockdown. No equipment needed. All you want to do, like I spoke about before, is look at the position of the feet. So landing on the feet and using the feet to grip the floor almost, making sure the knees and the ankles don't drop in, and making sure that torso doesn't lean over too much. And then obviously how well you land as well. So again, I'll just do another couple of demonstrations. So from this angle, if I go up into that tall to short position and I land, and as soon as I land, I come to a complete stop. That's what you want. What we might see, if you do it at home, is this position, and then you stop, but you don't actually come to a complete stop. As soon as our feet hit the floor, and as soon as we try and land, we want to absorb that force. We don't want to absorb it over too long a distance. So coming to a complete stop, which again will will transfer very, very well into tennis. It's like Josh mentioned earlier, that player that gets moved out to the side, but then once they've hit the ball, they take 2 or 3 steps to then come back. If you can only take 1 step and come back, it doesn't mean you're any faster. It just means you're more efficient. If you're more efficient in these movements, you're going to be faster on court, but you're going to move faster on court, but you're not necessarily going to be faster. You're going to reduce your risk of injury on court as well, and then have more chance of getting to that next ball, whether that changes that ball from 2 to 3 steps afterwards, and now you're racing to stay in the point. 1 step and go, you're on top of the point and you're being aggressive in that point. It's a huge area to look into, and obviously we've got a limited time on it today, but we can develop and build on that over the coming weeks within the show.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Mike, I'm glad he brought up, Mike brought up, how you can use your where am I? This way. He's talking about the landing and all these things, and at ATA we always talk about how we can use every single movement as an assessment, and then like for coaches out there, that brings so much information from the athletes, like not being able to land, and your knees coming in, then your hips are weak, and your ankle, and all those things. And I'm glad you brought that up, because we can overlook, like especially sometimes parents think that your kid might be ready to do all this jumping, crashing, and stuff like that, and advance the program, but the foundation, which is what you're talking about by looking at the knees going in, right? Like the foundation of the movement is not there, so it's time to spend some time strength and mobility, and then build for the power, so they can actually go to the power and never come back, always stay there and keep progressing as they go. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because it happens a lot. We still see it, right? We still see it, so again, we're here to educate. So glad you brought that up.
And I think one thing as well.
Yeah,
I was saying it's not sexy. It's sexy to do all those power jumps and twists and stuff.
it is, right? That's what we see on TV. That's what happened, right? We always see the high level athletes going at it, but you never see how they got there. So they're already showing you their max. They are. So, and for parents out there, you also need to understand that they went through progressions to get there. They just didn't show you. It's not sexy enough, right? To go through those. Yeah, Mike, we're gonna.
Yeah, and I think then going again, just building on that, we often see something different on 2 legs to what we see on 1 leg. So doing that 2-leg landing, we might see a very, very good landing. We then put that on 1 leg, and it just doesn't look the same anymore. And obviously, having 1 leg that's a little bit more strong and stable than the other leg is a massively natural thing. It doesn't mean that's something that we've got to accept either. That's something that can be trained, it can be improved, and for the majority of people, it needs to be improved. So I think using the double leg that I've talked about, but then using that single leg like you saw in the video, is just that advanced progression to be able to say, well, our sport's predominantly played on 1 leg, and more sport is predominantly played on 1 leg. We need to get good on that single leg, and we need to get strong and stable on that single leg as well. So really important to know.
That's awesome. I kind of like how all of the things we talked about today, like the ankle mobility, kind of goes into that athletic posture and keeping good balance and up the chain. And then we went to core, which is strength and stability to maintain those postures, whether it be single arm or single leg, like you had just said, Mike. And then power absorption and impact control to develop your power. Like they almost go together. Thinking you could like piece them together and focus on those 2 things and into your impact control. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Great. I think, just again what you're saying, Josh. Everything was like boom, boom, boom. And it's gonna get even better as we keep going, right? So
absolutely, I'm excited. Yeah,
cool.
All right, guys. Well, that was good. I mean, you guys,
Yeah.
if there's something that specific that you like to see, you can always go back and watch this Fitness Aces on demand. It's going to be on Tennis 2020 YouTube channel. It's also on Austin Tennis Academy and Soto Tennis Academy's Facebook pages. So on demand Fitness Aces, and we will see you guys again next week. Until then,
Yeah,
stay safe,
sure.
healthy.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Bye,
guys.
guys.
All right, guys.
See you guys.
Out there.